Welcome to Tea and Tarot with me, your host, Yashna. Each week I'll share what I've learned as I dive deeper into the world of tarot. I've got my cards in front of me, my cup of tea, and I can't wait to share this journey with you. This is Tea and Tarot.
Hi, welcome back to Tea and Tarot with me, Yashna. It's been a while. It's been a long time since I've done one of these episodes. It's been about 8 months. And first and foremost, I am so sorry to anyone who's been listening to these episodes who was looking forward to the next set of episodes, and then I just didn't post anything for quite a while. I don't have any great excuse except that my day job got a little crazy, very time consuming, and honestly, the first half of this year just kind of passed by in the blink of an eye. I didn't even realize it had already hit July and now August until I kind of blinked and was like, yeah, this is not sustainable anymore. So my major life update is I am no longer working at the job I was at for the last 5.5 years of my life. It was time, and I realized I stopped doing a lot of things I love because work had just become really consuming, which happens. It happens time to time, Every job's got its up and downs, but I no longer wanted to be in a place where I wasn't doing the things I love anymore. I hadn't touched my tarot deck in 7 months. When I had come to the end of the Major Arcana series, I was really excited to also do a yearly spread for this year, and I never did that. I just kind of let it fall through the cracks, and I haven't touched my deck. I haven't done a lot with tarot until the last week or two, where I've just taken some time to myself to reflect a bit on how the last year's been, the things I've done, the things I haven't done, and I've really missed it. I've missed doing this podcast. I've missed my few listeners out there who've been listening to these episodes, watching them on YouTube or listening on your podcast subscription service. I've seen that there have been quite a few new listeners in the last couple months. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining my journey. And for anyone who's been listening since the beginning, thank you for your patience. Thank you for your grace. I am back. Now that I've left my old job, I am taking some time to really do the things I love, rediscover all these old hobbies and passions that I kind of let slide for a little bit. And, I'm not going to lie, I'm a little out of touch with it. I really haven't touched these cards in a while. And I'm really, really excited to reconnect with them, to reconnect with the meanings of the cards, and to also finish out this chapter of diving into each of the cards, diving into each of the meanings, and sharing it with all of you. So, welcome back. My very long-winded way to say this is going to be great. And I'm excited to be back. I'm excited to be here. Rebooting the series, one thing I have decided to change is I'm no longer going to do a full tarot reading for myself at the end of each episode. In between, I might decide to do one of the other spreads from the book that I haven't got into. I didn't start doing the Major Arcana spreads until a little later into those episodes because of when I got the Tarot for Light series guidebook. And so I'll do some of those intermittently, but I've decided to pivot into doing more daily spread readings. So I'm just going to draw a card with a generic lesson and message for the week, and I think that will be more applicable to a lot of people who are listening, a general reminder for whenever you're listening to this, for whatever space you may be in. And part of that is also because I'm going to pivot from doing 1 card per episode to 2 cards per episode. The Minor Arcana don't necessarily have as much depth and history to cover as the Major Arcana did. So I'm going to cover 2 cards at a time and move my tarot spreads into just a daily reading, or not daily, but a weekly single card reading. And as I'm doing that, I will be recording the majority of the content from my main hub, my home, but I might film some of the little card draws from some of my adventures and travels. I'll be moving a lot over the next few months just to enjoy life, reconnect with the earth, and just become myself again. And I'm really excited if some of those card draws make it into these episodes and I'm able to share some of those adventures with all of you in a different way than I normally would. As per tradition, a little tidbit I'll share with you guys is I've got some matcha, but it's not my regular matcha. It's actually matcha from Uji, Japan. I went in April this year for the first time in my life, and I absolutely loved Japan. I fell in love with it. I loved the matcha there. I actually went to Uji and walked around, got to see the Byodo Inn temple, which was gorgeous, walked the streets, and I bought some matcha, and oh my God, I totally get why people can be a little snobby about matcha because it totally makes a difference for the taste. The color looks really different than some of the old matcha I used to make. I have become a huge matcha fan over that trip and since then as I've continued to make myself matcha with what I've bought. So, with that said, let's jump into today. At some point, I'm probably going to look back at the major arcana and do some more reflection on those cards. I might even rewatch some of my old episodes, supplement some of the content with anything new that I've learned over time. But for now, we're just going to jump straight into the minor arcana. I really want to start this new chapter off. So as a reminder, the major arcana, when drawn in a reading, usually signify major milestones, major life events, transitions, lessons. The minor arcana, on the other hand, reflect more day-to-day experiences, and they kind of help fill in some of those moments and lessons that come between major life events. Not every moment in your life is a major transition, so the minor arcana are more to help fill in some of that space, help with readings and draws during those moments when you're not going through some major pivots. There are 56 total minor arcana cards broken into 4 elements, each represented by different symbols, and each of those also focuses on different aspects of our lives. For each suit, there are 14 cards, 10 that are numbered ace through 10 to represent growth and learnings over each of those suits, and with each ascending number, you gain more energy and lessons from that element, similar to the major arcana, kind of going from 0 through 21. There are also 4 court cards for each element, the page, knight, queen, and king. These are kind of seen more as people messengers, sharing opinions and embodying a persona as it shares a message. Sometimes when you have a reading that's really heavy on court cards, it could also mean there's too many opinions in your life right now or too many voices kind of playing into your decisions and clouding your mind. But the page through king are also kind of seen as their own 4 stages of leveling through life. I'm going to jump into some of the general meanings and themes around all of these in a moment, but at a high level, that's kind of how the minor arcana are broken down. So let's start by talking about the elements and symbols first. There are 4 in each deck. And some decks may use a slightly different symbol, but typically you will have the wands, cups, swords, and pentacles. The wands represent the element of fire, which is typically associated with creativity, action, illumination, inspiration, passion, manifestation, energy, and willpower. Usually wand cards will tie back to your instinct and follow more what you desire internally. Carl Jung, a psychologist, helped put together simple mental processes across each of the 4 elements to kind of help understand and internalize the meanings of each of these in a different way as well, which I actually really love. So in association with fire comes the general notion of I desire coming from the soul. The second element we'll be diving into is cups. These represent water. And typically it's associated with emotions, relationships, love, intuition, compassion, empathy, feelings, and healing. Cup cards ask you to take a moment to tap into your feelings more and look towards the relationships in your life. Intimate relationships, friendships, family, just all of those interpersonal connections. The mental process associated with this element is, I feel, from the heart. Swords take a sharper turn from cups and represent the element of air, touching more on communication, thought, perception and observation, logic, strategy, the mind, psychology, awareness, ideas, and challenges. Swords will often depict more obstacles and needing to use intellect to make decisions. The mental process associated with the sword card is, I think, from the mind. And finally, the last element in the deck is represented by pentacles, associated with earth. These cards touch on health, wealth, physical security, the material world, comfort, responsibilities, manifesting, and bringing things to earth, bringing things to fruition. These cards really connect back to achievements, money, and property. The mental process associated with this element is I possess from the body. So those are the 4 major elements that we'll be diving into over the next part of the series. I'll be covering them in that same order and then also going through them numerically. So the next episode is going to be the Ace and 2 of Wands. One thing you'll notice as you draw these cards and connect with them more is that while each element connects the 14 cards for that suit, there are also a lot of common themes and messages across each of the numbers and each of the court cards as well. Numbers 1 through 10 for each element represent their own cycle, centered around the element's meaning, similar to how the major arcana are considered their own cycle through life. So, going through them, Ace, or 1, is all about new beginnings, potential, fresh opportunities, and the beginning or birth of the element it's tied to. Then you step into 2, which is all about balance, duality, partnerships, and choices. From there, 3 starts to tap more into growth, creativity, expansion, and first expressions of that element. 4 finds stability, structure, security, but also sometimes stagnation. 5 is typically a turning point within the card numbers. You're kind of reaching the halfway point, and you shift very significantly into more instability, conflict, loss, and struggle. 5 is often one of the darkest cards in each of the elements and talks to one of the hardest moments for someone in each of the elemental journeys that you're going through. 6 begins to see some recovery and balance restored, moving past those difficulties into harmony and triumph. 7 focuses around assessing, reassessing, dealing with choices and challenges that test you. 8 is all about movement, diligence, mastery, and persistence, keeping strong as you push through the final numbers in this element. 9 really represents the final stretch, attaining those desires, seeing things come to fruition, deeper reflection and realization. And finally, 10 is the completion and finality around this element. This card is about fulfillment and beginning to transition into a new cycle. Now, separate from 1 through 10 and that cycle, you also have the 4 court cards as well. Those represent more messengers and personas of the element rather than a phase or cycle of growth. Each of the court cards can be seen as someone who is growing and learning and sharing those lessons based on where they are in life. The page is the youngest and could be thought of someone who's more childlike, maybe someone you could think of as a teen or a young adult. They're a student, curious and learning, looking to new beginnings, and they're sharing their youthful and unpolished energy. The knight comes next and could maybe represent someone who's a little more matured, say in their 20s, slowly coming into their own. The knight represents an active seeker, someone who's moving with speed, has higher ambitions, and is pursuing their dreams, sometimes without caution. The queen is a more matured messenger and is considered a nurturer and master of inner expression. She represents intuition, emotional depth, holding space, and influencing others. She is the most in touch with her internal abilities and strengths. The king is the final level for the court cards and is considered a leader and master of external control. He represents authority, responsibility, matured mastery, and decisive action. As you combine the meanings from these different cards to each of the elements, you paint 56 different stories and day-to-day messages and journeys. And once you add the reverse meanings too, it's adding 112 total to your readings. Even if you didn't remember every aspect of the minor arcana cards, remembering the general gist of each number and element would be enough to pull the main messages from a card. For example, if I pulled a Queen of Cups, I could loosely translate it to someone with high intelligence and intuition around her element, which for cups would be centered around relationships. So without any other research on the card, I know pulling the Queen of Cups at least points to a message around being really in tune with your relationships, and it's likely one of the highest emotional intelligence cards in the deck. And that kind of wraps up this first chapter and this first episode and return to our journey to dive into the minor arcana cards and starting to understand more of the nuances and meanings behind each of them. I can't say it enough, but I am so excited to be jumping back into it. I'm so excited for this next chapter. And again, thank you for your grace and understanding as I've been on hiatus. I am so excited to reconnect with my cards. I'm excited to take them with me on some of my travels and journeys coming up over the next few months and to share little tidbits of that with all of you over these episodes. And yeah, let's end today's episode with the new daily draw. I need to stop calling it a daily draw. It's not a daily draw. We're going to end today's episode with our weekly card draw and a general message to carry us through the week. So I'm going to shuffle the deck a little bit, enjoy some card ASMR. Okay, I'm just going to split the deck where it wants me to and draw our single card for today, which is the Knight of Wands. I can already go into this very high level because we just talked about what each of these elements and each of these court cards mean, but it likely at a high level is at least a message about kind of diving headfirst into your passions, embracing your passions, looking at some of the imagery in this card. That's definitely what it looks like, but I also have my guidebook next to me, so I'm just going to open it up to the Knight of Wands so we can read the message together. Okay, this card feels very perfect for where I'm at right now and perfect for this week, but this card is all about pursuing your dreams, fast energy, letting a little bit of spontaneity into your life as you kind of jump into those passion projects that you've been tinkering with, jump back into manifesting your dreams and things you've been feeling inspired to do recently. So really, this card is all about just jumping into it, go with it. Follow your passions, pursue your curiosities and your interests, and run wild with it. Let a little spontaneity in, let a little creative passion in, and make sure you're fanning that flame of inspiration. I think this is kind of a perfect first draw for us to have for restarting this chapter, restarting this podcast, and jumping into this new chapter of delving into the minor arcana cards, and also perfect for my own personal life where I'm taking a break from my day job for some time so I can take some time to tap into some of my other interests and hobbies that I haven't been able to focus on too much in the last few months. So this is really exciting. This is a great message to send us off on our first week of this new journey. And tune back in next week where I'll be breaking down the first two minor arcana cards in this journey, the Ace and Two of Wands. See you next week. Thank you for listening to Tea and Tarot with Yashna. This episode was produced, hosted, and edited by me, Yashna Bensel, and brought to you by Tea Time Podcasts. The tarot reading was done using the Lightseers deck by Chris Ann, and all card visuals were from the Lightseers deck and the Rider Waite Smith tarot deck. Research was done using Wikipedia, The Ultimate Guide to Tarot by Liz Dean, Tarot for Lightseers by Chris Ann, and many, many Google searches. Music was made using SoundRaw. Join me next week for another episode of Tea and Tarot.